Donald Trump had a rather terrible performance during his town hall with ABC, where he breezed through one bungled answer after the next. Talking about coronavirus was no exception. Take a look.
We're going to be okay, and it is going away, and it's probably going to go away now a lot faster because of the vaccine. It would go away without the vaccine, George, but it's going to go away a lot faster with it.
It would go away without the vaccine?
Sure, over a period of time. Sure, with time it goes
and many
away.
deaths.
And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. That will all happen. But with the vaccine, I think it will go away very quickly.
Got to take a quick break.
But I really believe we're rounding the corner, and I believe that's strong.
As you know, Dr. Fauci disagrees with that.
Well, I mean, but a lot of people do agree with me.
Now, when you hear Trump use the phrase herd mentality, you might think that, especially coming from a doofus like him, he's referring to his supporters pouring into a Target and yelling at patrons to take off their masks.
Take off your mask! Take it off!
Or you might also think of Trump supporters running into a Trump rally that's taking place indoors without wearing masks. And look, as tempting as it is to dunk on Trump because he is a moron, in reality, what he was referring to there is herd immunity, which is an incredibly dangerous and awful response or policy toward coronavirus, because it would mean that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans would die as a result of pursuing that short-sighted and awful policy. So herd immunity is something that Donald Trump has mentioned before, but he did the same thing that you heard in that first video. He didn't call it herd immunity, he called it herd mentality. So let's take a look.
Other countries try to use the herd or the herd mentality. It's just something that doesn't work. If we didn't do what we did at the time, we could have lost more than 2 million people. I really believe that. I could show you charts of other places that gave it a shot and they're not doing well. And I would show it to you right now. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but they gave that a shot. It's an automatic. I mean, everybody would say, let's do that, until they sit down and start thinking. And we could have lost more than 2 million people. We could have lost more than 2 million. It could have been much more than that, by the way. We have one that says from 1.6 to 2.2, but it could have really been more than that. But I looked at one country in particular, that is using the herd mentality and not working out very well.
So Trump was likely referring to Sweden, which implemented herd immunity. But as you can see in those earlier videos, Trump referred to herd immunity as herd mentality. And he also acknowledged how disastrous that policy really would be and how it would lead to so many people dying. Now, Trump has pivoted towards something more accepting of herd immunity. I'll tell you why in just a minute, but John, why don't you jump in?
I just want to die right now. Yeah, I had missed in the past that he had called it mentality in those past. I've seen some of those videos, but I guess I just naturally fill in the blanks to be accurate. What's amazing about it is that he has repeatedly, up to recently, because recently he just starts saying that he's doing this, that they're pursuing this strategy. But for months he had been like taking a victory lap, dunking on other people who'd be stupid enough to pursue this strategy, including, as you know, Sweden, which is literally the one European country that every right winger says we should follow suit with. After being apparently the only identifiable US politician to actually push for this early on, with Dr. Fauci having to tell him that it would kill millions of people. He then uses his own stupid suggestion to look smart by comparison, which just seems absolutely insane. Like, and the weird having to one up himself, like that the 2.2 million people that would die, that he'll now never acknowledge that he said that it would have somehow been even higher than that. He doesn't know anything about this. He doesn't care anything about this. And I know that you're gonna go through some of the numbers of how this would actually play out, but really fast, let's just say you have to do your job as a journalist to call it like they implemented the herd immunity strategy. But that doesn't mean anything. It just means let's not do everything we can to stop people from being infected with this. It's as if zombies were rampaging through and I implemented the buffet strategy, which was eventually their stomachs will be full of warm human flesh and blood, and then surely they'll stop feasting on us at that point. It's not really a strategy, it's just like, it's like you gilded surrender, basically. And that is literally what they are pursuing right now. They're increasingly willing to admit it with casual references like you saw from Donald Trump last night, but that is 100% federally the strategy that we're pursuing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if it's not officially announced, Trump has really backed away from doing anything or even considering anything that would be effective in responding to coronavirus. Meanwhile, the cases continue to rise. We're still seeing many Americans die every day, hundreds, if not on average, 1,000 Americans a day dying from this virus. And this just lack of compassion or concern for human lives is kind of incredible. And look, Trump really doesn't like the way we're talking about him right now. So I was trying to bark through this entire segment, but don't worry, I put a stop to it. So where is this language now coming from, right? He mentions herd immunity, calls it herd mentality. Well, keep in mind that fairly recently, there was a new coronavirus advisor who joined the coronavirus task force, and he's very much in favor of herd immunity. Scott Atlas, one of President Trump's top medical advisors, is urging the White House to embrace a controversial herd immunity strategy to combat the pandemic, which would entail allowing the coronavirus to spread through most of the population to quickly build resistance to the virus. Now, he promoted this idea during an interview with Brian Kilmeade on Fox News. So if you hear Kayleigh McEnany say that Scott Atlas does not support this policy, please understand, just like most other statements given by Kayleigh McEnany, that's a lie. Also, the administration has already begun to implement some policies along these lines, according to current and former officials as well as experts, particularly with regard to testing. So testing has slowed down a little bit. That's one other thing to keep in mind, because it goes along with this pivot toward a policy that's even more disastrous than what the country was already experiencing. And now let's talk about how many Americans are likely to die while herd immunity is implemented. Atlas has argued both internally and in public that an increased case count would move the nation more quickly to herd immunity and won't lead to more deaths if the vulnerable are protected, meaning elderly people in nursing homes. But infectious disease experts strongly dispute that, noting that more than 25,000 people younger than 65 have died of the virus in the United States. And by the way, these are numbers from August 31st. So I'm guessing that the numbers of deaths for people under 65 are probably higher now. In addition, the United States has a larger number of vulnerable people of all ages because of high rates of heart and lung disease and obesity, and millions of at-risk people live outside of nursing homes, many in households with children whom Atlas believes should return to school in person. So this guy's a disaster. Now let's get to some pretty devastating numbers. Herd immunity for the coronavirus would need to be somewhere between 50 to 70% of the US population having resistance to the virus, which means about 165 million to 230 million people would need to be infected and develop immunity. With the death rate of about 1%, that means 2.3 million people could die in this country under herd immunity. Disaster.
It's a great strategy. It's the best. I take issue with one thing you said there. You said what Scott Atlas believes, and then you referenced accurately that infectious disease experts disagree with him. In fairness, that's chops because he's not an infectious disease expert. So it's really unfair to put him up against those people who actually know what they're talking about. I know people might be confused about that since he's apparently Trump's top medical advisor on a viral pandemic, but he's not actually a doctor of that sort, doesn't necessarily know that much more than any rando about this. And judging by the conclusions that he's reached, I'd argue he knows less than someone like me, whose medical expertise comes mainly from watching episodes of House. Yeah, millions of people will likely die. And bear in mind, he's saying the numbers won't go up significantly if we protect vulnerable people. First of all, as you noted, many people who are younger than that die. Many more suffer terrible injuries that can potentially be very long lasting. We're learning more about that over time. But also, this is a political movement that has given rise to the Target rioters and things like that, the people you just showed on that video. How are you going to protect those vulnerable people when you have convinced people by telling them to liberate their states that they don't need to deal with this, that it's a hoax, that it's fake? Why protect grandma from something that was just invented by Bill Gates and doesn't actually exist? None of it actually makes any sense whatsoever. And to look out there and to see this and know, like, I'm sure many people watching this have lost family members to this. I lost a family member to this. To look into the future and know that we are doing everything we can to increase the number of people that are going to die from this, it's so horrifying. And the cost, like, even if Trump loses, we're looking at another 6 months of rampant 1,000 deaths plus every single day. I mean, God only, like, if he actually wins re-election, who can say how many hundreds of thousands of additional people will die? But the entire thing is like a horror movie that we're being forced to watch in real time.
Look, even if Trump loses, we are on track based on the number of Americans who just reject wearing masks. We are on track to have hundreds of thousands of more deaths by the end of the year. That's a story we'll get to later in the rundown. But Scott Atlas has referred to himself as the anti-Fauci, which means that we should be listening to Fauci. If you care about your health, your loved one's health, you want to make sure that you and your loved ones survive throughout this pandemic, listen to the advice of Anthony Fauci as much as possible. And he has weighed in on herd immunity. Here's what he had to say.
Are they still at the White House? I know that some of the advisors have said that they're not doing this, but are they talking about herd immunity?
That's not a fundamental strategy that we're using. The fundamental strategy that we clearly articulate and go by through the task force is to try to prevent as many infections as you possibly can prevent. That when you get someone who's infected, you do the identification, isolation, and contact tracing, and you do the kinds of things to prevent infections, the things that I've just been speaking about with you when we were talking about trying to make sure we don't get any surging of cases over the Labor Day weekend. So I'm not so sure what that's all about, but we certainly are not wanting to wait back and just let people get infected so that you can develop herd immunity. That's certainly not my approach. It's certainly not Dr. Birx's approach or any of the other people that I know of on that task force.
Now, of course, with the exception of Scott Atlas, and props to Anthony Fauci for using that awesome Zoom feature that like really smooths things out. He looks great in that video.
Oh my God!
Had to comment on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, he can say that. Okay. He's apparently wrong. Maybe that's not his strategy. Maybe that's not Birx, although I doubt that. You cannot look at what the federal government has done / is not doing and not come to the conclusion that they don't care. And again, we call it the herd immunity strategy. It just means not doing anything to stop it. He's not instituting any sort of nationwide lockdown, nationwide mask wearing mandate. He's not even encouraging people at his own rallies to wear masks. He is allowing it to spread. That's all it is. And the one extra person that I think deserves some criticism here is George Stephanopoulos. Because he knew going into that Trump has been making references to herd immunity, that Scott Atlas is on his team and all of that. Trump uses it in an answer, and Stephanopoulos is like, well, we have to go to a break. Okay, yeah, he fact checked him on a few things, but what is more consequential than this? Him casually slipping into a town hall answer that, oh yeah, no, we're doing the thing. Remember the thing I said is gonna kill millions of people? No, I changed my mind. We're totally doing that. Yeah, we really have to get to those commercials. That's the most important thing right now. What's the point of having him there if you're not gonna question him on that topic?
Well, look, George Stephanopoulos isn't the executive over at ABC, isn't an executive over at ABC. He's hosting this town hall, and yeah, breaks suck, and you got to go to breaks. But I think I'm just keeping it real. Breaks are the worst. But he did do a decent job fact checking in a number of other answers. So I will be critical when I think that it's appropriate. And I hear what you're saying. I would prefer that they didn't go to break in that moment. But I don't know if he's 100% in control of that. You get what I'm saying? And speaking of which,
go to the break and come back. Go to the break, come back, and ask about it. You can't move on from that. It's too important. Like if he was like, oh yeah, and by the way, in a week I'm gonna nuke Iran. We got a break. I can't ask a follow up about that. No, at some point you're obligated. Hundreds of thousands of lives, possibly millions of lives are on the line. What are you there for if not to ask questions about that?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.